You feel the first contraction late at night. There's no monitor beeping beside you, no bright fluorescent lights, just the orange glow of a small fire, the smell of smoke, and the low hum of voices just outside. Voices that do not stop or panic. For roughly 300,000 years, since the earliest members of our species first appeared, women gave birth surrounded by other people, not doctors, not strangers in scrubs you had never met before that day. Mothers, sisters, aunts, women who had done this before, and women who would do it again. Today, in much of the world, birth happens behind closed doors. 1 or 2 medical professionals. Equipment everywhere. A room you have probably never set foot in before. And somewhere along the way, many of us picked up an idea about what natural childbirth really looks like. A tough woman, alone, gritting her teeth through it in the wild, the way we imagine animals do it. But here is the strange part. Of all the great apes, humans are almost the only ones who do not give birth alone. Chimpanzees do. Gorillas do. Most mammals retreat somewhere quiet, deliver on their own, and rejoin the group hours later. Humans do not do this. We never really could. Why not? The answer is written into your skeleton, quite literally, into the shape of your pelvis. In 1960, anthropologist Sherwood Washburn proposed an idea that is now famous in evolutionary biology. He called it the obstetrical dilemma. Here is the simple version. When your ancestors started walking upright on 2 legs, the pelvis had to narrow. A narrower pelvis makes walking and running far more efficient. At roughly the same time, something else was happening. The human brain was getting dramatically bigger, and a bigger brain means a bigger skull. 2 evolutionary pressures, pulling in opposite directions. A birth canal getting tighter, a baby's head getting larger. The result is that human birth became one of the most difficult deliveries in the entire animal kingdom. Tight, slow, often painful, and crucially, risky to do alone. In the 1990s, biological anthropologists Wenda Trevathan and Karen Rosenberg took Washburn's idea further. They pointed out something fascinating about the mechanics of human birth. Because of the tight fit through the pelvis, human babies are usually rotated as they pass through. So they are born facing away from the mother, rather than facing toward her like most other primates. Think about what that means in practice. If a baby emerges facing away from you, it is extremely difficult to reach down, guide it safely, clear fluid from its airway, or free a cord wrapped around its neck all by yourself in the final, exhausting moments of labor. Trevathan called this the cooperative birth model. The idea is simple, but it changes everything. Having someone else there to help was not a modern addition layered on top of natural childbirth later. It may have been part of natural human childbirth from the very beginning. This is not just a theory built from bones and math either. When anthropologist Marjorie Shostak lived among the Kalahari, documenting the lives of the Kungsan and famously recording the story of a woman named Nisa, she described childbirth as a deeply social event. Older women, experienced mothers who had attended dozens of births before, were present. They offered guidance, physical support, reassurance. This pattern shows up again and again in foraging societies studied across Africa, South America, and beyond. A birthing woman is almost never left completely alone. Someone holds her. Someone catches the baby, the afterbirth, and the first fragile moments of a newborn's life. There is another piece of this puzzle that is easy to overlook: grandmothers. Human females are unusual among mammals. Many of us live for decades after our reproductive years end. Anthropologist Kristen and her colleagues proposed an idea known as the grandmother hypothesis to help explain why. Post-reproductive women who help feed grandchildren, watch toddlers, and assist at births free up younger mothers to have more children and improve the odds those children survive. In other words, the presence of an experienced older woman at a birth was not just helpful. It may be one of the reasons human women evolved to live so long past menopause in the first place. So let's reconstruct what this might have actually looked like. You are inside a shelter built from branches, grass, and hide. Smoke drifts up through a gap near the top, where a fire is kept low and steady. It has been hours already. Your body knows exactly what to do, even if part of your mind is terrified. Beside you, an older woman presses warm hands against your lower back. Maybe she is your mother. Maybe she is simply the woman in your group who has done this more times than anyone can count. She is not panicking. She has heard these sounds before. The sounds a body makes when things are going well, and the sounds that mean something might be going wrong. Outside, someone keeps the fire fed. Someone keeps the younger children occupied and away from the shelter. Someone has quietly started preparing water and cloth, not because anyone gave an order, but because this is simply what happens whenever a birth begins. There is no anesthesia, no surgical instruments waiting on a tray. If complications arise, there are herbal preparations, birthing positions passed down for generations, and the steady, practiced hands of women who learned all of this the same way they learned to track an animal or build a shelter, by watching, by doing, by being shown, again and again until it became second nature. It is intense, it is painful, sometimes for a very long time, but it is almost never lonely, and that distinction matters more than it might seem. And this is where the real twist comes in. We tend to assume that natural birth means solitary birth, that medical support, emotional support, even simply having other people in the room, is something hospitals invented in the last couple of centuries, layered on top of an older, tougher, more independent way of doing things. But the evidence points in the opposite direction. Skeletal remains going back to early members of the genus Homo, and arguably even earlier, in species like Australopithecus, the group that includes the famous skeleton known as Lucy, already show the narrow, twisted pelvic shape that makes solo birth so risky for a large-brained species. Some researchers have gone as far as suggesting that some form of birth attendance, of midwifery in its most basic sense, may be one of the oldest social roles in human history, possibly older than most tool traditions we can trace clearly in the archaeological record, possibly older than language itself. What changed over hundreds of thousands of years was not whether birth required help. It was who provided that help and where it happened. Which brings us to right now. Maternal mortality has dropped dramatically since the rise of modern medicine, and that is genuinely one of the great success stories in human history. Hospitals, sterile equipment, blood transfusions, emergency surgery. These innovations have saved an enormous number of lives for mothers and for babies alike. But something else shifted too, almost as a side effect. In many modern births, the room is full of equipment, yet sometimes strangely short on the kind of presence your ancestors would have considered completely non-negotiable. A familiar face, a continuous companion, someone whose only role, for the entire duration, is you. Not a rotating shift of staff checking in between other patients, but one person, present the whole time, the way it always used to be. Research on labor support backs this up. Studies looking at the presence of a continuous, known support person during labor, sometimes called a doula, consistently find links to shorter labors, lower rates of medical intervention, and mothers reporting feeling more in control of their own experience. The cooperative birth model your ancestors relied on for hundreds of thousands of years still seems to matter, even now, even with all our technology. So picture it again. You feel the first contraction. Maybe this time it is not in a shelter lit by firelight. Maybe it is in a hospital room, fluorescent lights overhead, a monitor quietly tracking a tiny heartbeat. But if there is a hand resting on your shoulder, if there is a voice telling you that you are doing exactly what your body was built to do, if there is someone there who has done this before and is not going anywhere, then in the way that matters most, almost nothing has changed at all. You were never meant to do this alone, and for nearly all of human history, you never had to.